This boy was forced to stay in that position without moving. It turned out his head was stuck in a railing on a balcony, and the railing was falling. His mother was holding on to the railing for dear life. If she let go, he would fall to his death. Just as the railing slipped from her hands, Kelly scaled the ladder and caught him. Meanwhile, the firefighters rushed in just in time, grabbing the railing, but the iron railing was really heavy, and any slight mistake could hurt the boy's neck. At the critical moment, Casey thought of an idea. First, use a rope to secure the railing, then use a hammer to make an anchor point on the doorframe. Tie the rope to the hammer and temporarily stabilize the railing. Then they cut the railing and rescued the boy. The boy appeared fine, and Sylvie inspected his neck. The boy's mother pleaded with Kelly not to send him to the hospital, but Kelly explained it wasn't his call. Sylvie informed her that she had decided to send him to the hospital, just for a checkup. When they arrived at the hospital, Sylvie learned that the boy's file was flagged by CPS because his mother had lost custody of him 3 years ago for abuse. Sylvie watched in horror as social workers came into the hospital and took the boy from his mother. The woman shouted loudly for help. She said her husband couldn't breathe. The man was lying on the sofa. His tongue was swollen and protruding from his mouth. He was about to stop breathing. Mika suspected he had an allergic reaction, but the woman said her husband had no history of allergies, and they had only eaten pizza for dinner until Mika opened the man's mouth. They finally found something. A spider was in the man's throat. Mika gently grasped the spider with tweezers, slowly took it out, but the man was still in danger. His blood pressure was dropping rapidly. He was about to go into anaphylactic shock. Mika quickly administered an injection of adrenaline. The allergic symptoms disappeared immediately. The man finally returned to normal. There was a hole on the man's face. The paramedic looked closely. It was clearly a gunshot wound, and the boy beside him looked panicked. The man said he was cleaning his gun, thinking it was unloaded, but it accidentally went off. Jessica didn't believe him because there were no burn marks on the wound. This indicated it wasn't shot at close range. The man was definitely lying. When looking at the boy holding his shoulder, the paramedic understood immediately.
Did you hurt your arm? Daddy's gonna jump back when you pull the trigger, didn't it?
The boy nodded. Indeed, the son had shot him, but it was an accident. The man said he always locked the gun, with the key hanging around his neck, but he took it off while showering, and the son found it. Then he begged the paramedics to keep it a secret. He said his wife died a year ago, leaving him alone with his son. If the cop knew about this, he would lose custody. At that moment, 2 cops arrived. Seeing the wound on the man's face, they instantly recognized it as a gunshot. The cop asked what happened.
I don't know. Nisha isn't talking for a while.
And said she needed to get a stair chair, then got him over to med. The boy had to go along too. After hearing this, the cops temporarily relented. The man looked gratefully at Jessica, mouthing the words "thank you." When getting out of a car hit by power lines, you must land with both feet at the same time, or you'll get electrocuted like this. Just now, a man crashed into an electrical pole, and the power lines fell to the ground like a writhing mass of snakes, leaving the man trapped inside his car. The high voltage wires were sparking densely on the car roof. The man was repeatedly calling for help. The firefighters were stunned by the scene, not daring to act rashly, as the entire area could be electrified. Ben told the man to stay in the car and not to move. Just as the firefighters were trying to hook the wires aside, the car began leaking gas. At that moment, if even the tiniest spark fell on it, the man's car would instantly explode. The situation was extremely urgent, but cutting off the power would take some time. The firefighters could only continue to hook away all the high voltage lines from the car roof. While trying to get the man out of the car, the man carefully opened the car door. Jack instructed him not to let his hands touch both the ground and the car, then to hop off like a bunny with both feet landing simultaneously. This way, the circuit wouldn't be broken. Ben instructed the man to jump on the count of 3.
1, 2, 3.
A group of firefighters were trapped in the garage. The homemade bomb also blew one up just now because the firefighter entered the wrong code. The system automatically locked the garage. The homeowner was a security system researcher. The garage was made of special materials reinforced with steel. Not only was it fireproof and burglar-proof, but even if light couldn't get in, it was as solid as a fortress. The room next to the garage was on fire. The temperature in the garage was getting higher and higher. The smoke was getting worse. They had to find a way to vent it. The house had every window reinforced with security glass that literally would not shatter. The firefighters were anxiously pacing around. Suddenly, Miller thought if the glass couldn't work, they could try the wall. Sure enough, they quickly hammered a big hole in the wall. They hurriedly connected the water hose and started putting out the fire. Meanwhile, the team used the fire hose to spray water to cool down the garage. The firefighters inside were almost exhausted from the high temperature. Suddenly, Andy saw the water heater nearby. She thought they could use its igniter, along with the gasoline in the car, to create an explosive to push the garage door. So they used their remaining strength to make an explosive. With a loud bang, although the explosion injured one firefighter. It also successfully blew the door open. Two girls hid on the car roof crying out loudly for help. The firefighters arrived. They found a dog covered in blood barking furiously at the girls. The girls said they were walking home from the bus stop, and the dog started chasing them. At that moment, a firefighter suggested using a tranquilizer gun, but the captain raised his hand to stop him. He said that the dog had no intention of attacking, as his hackles were not up and his ears were down. Considering the way he was moving around,
That's not a scary dog. That's a dog that's scared.
the captain approached the dog. To everyone's surprise, the dog didn't attack. Instead, it was as gentle as a kitten. The other firefighters quickly stepped forward to rescue the girls. Suddenly, the dog broke free and ran off. The captain decisively led the team in pursuit. Soon a harvester appeared in their sight. Then they found a man trapped under the harvester. The man's legs were tightly pinned down. It was then that they realized the dog was barking at the girls to attract attention. In order to save its owner, when the man was finally rescued, his legs were badly injured.
If something happens to me, can one of y'all call my son, ask him to pick up Peanut?
At that moment, the dog seemed to understand something and ran over.
I love you so much.
Somebody please help me!
The woman said her daughter did not come home last night. She was now sure her daughter was in this house because she had given her daughter a watch with a tracker. And at this moment, the man inside the house was secretly watching everything happening outside. One off-duty firefighter advised the woman to call the cop first, but the woman said she had already called, but they had not shown up.
There have been 3 black girls have gone missing from my neighborhood and the police have done nothing.
Firefighter Miller was furious upon hearing this and went straight to knock on the door. The man opened the door and appeared calm.
Supposed to let you people just walk into my house because you say you're firefighters? Get the hell out of here!
The woman was on the verge of collapsing. The cops finally arrived, but the cops said the homeowner had called saying a woman was creating a disturbance. The cops had an arrogant look on their faces. The firefighters couldn't take it anymore and were ready to force their way in on the pretext of a gas leak. However, the man still wouldn't let them in. Just as a physical confrontation was about to break out, the cops seemed to be siding with the man and took the woman aside, asking her to calm down. At this moment,
Whoa, here! That is more than a gas leak.
the paramedics arrived at the scene and found 2 injured people lying on the ground. Brett said they needed to call for another ambulance. Just then, an ambulance from a private company arrived.
Hey buddy, what happened? You and your friend having a duel?
Who that punk?
Brett checked the injured and found 1 shot in the chest and 1 in the abdomen, but the bullets were still inside when the other paramedics arrived and saw the injured.
Not what we thought it was. What the hell does that mean?
We're not allowed to take high-risk patients.
High risk for what? No insurance.
They actually refused to help and wanted to leave. At that moment, gunshots rang out. It turned out that 2 gangs were having a shootout. The paramedics and the injured were caught in the middle. The injured man in the yellow clothes still cheered for his gang.
Hey, you gotta hold still, okay? So I can bandage you to make it to the hospital.
At the critical moment, other firefighters and the chief arrived at the scene. They tried to stop the shooting, and one brave firefighter even stood in the middle and kept shouting, "Hold your fire!"
Hold your fire!
Finally, with the help of others, the 2 injured were taken to the hospital. At that moment, the cops arrived.
Right on time as usual.
A light airplane was caught in the lines of high-voltage electric towers while transporting a sick man for a liver transplant. Just moments ago, a solar storm hit the United States, causing all the instruments on the plane to malfunction. Fortunately, the high-voltage lines blocked the plane, preventing it from crashing. Although the power company had already cut the electricity due to the solar storm, there was still a large amount of high-voltage electricity remaining on the wires. Firefighters quickly deployed air cushion and ordered the 3 people on the plane to jump immediately. The pilot opened the cabin door, gave his phone to the woman, and then jumped down first. Next, it was the woman's turn, but she was reluctant to leave her critically ill husband behind. During their conversation, the captain told the woman that for the sake of her 2 children, she had to jump down, and he promised to personally go up and save her husband. After the woman jumped, the captain donned insulating gear and resolutely climbed onto the plane. After securing the man, the captain slowly lowered him down with a rope, gently placing him on the air cushion. Just at that moment, a high-voltage current came roaring towards them. The teammates kept calling out to the captain. In the next second, during the process of raising the drawbridge, a motorcycle tried to jump across. As a result, it fell at the top, leaving the rider and bike hanging. Firefighters quickly assessed the situation, finding the man directly below the bike. The drawbridge couldn't be lowered yet because Kelly feared the vibration might cause the bike to fall. He needed to go up to check if the bike was stable. After got to the top, he cautiously moved forward, secured the rope, and slowly approached the man. Meanwhile, Carver found the bridge operator, asking him to be ready to lower the drawbridge. Unexpectedly, the operator refused outright, saying no one could operate the bridge without supervisor's permission, and blamed the rider for the situation. On the other side, an accident occurred on the bridge. The bike handlebar slipped. but the bike narrowly stayed put. Seeing this, Kelly urgently called for the bridge to be lowered, but the operator firmly refused. However, the firefighter could not hesitate any longer. If the bike fell, both Kelly and the rider would be in danger. Carver kicked open the door, found the control lever, and slowly moved it. The drawbridge began to descend after reaching a certain angle. Kelly guided the man step by step to the bridge. Finally, they safely landed by climbing down the ladder. Woman broke her neck in car accident. The paramedic asked her not to move, but the next second, it turned out the woman was allergic to pollen. The scene was filled with pollen. With each sneeze, the bone fragments would shift. The captain remembered his grandmother saying, shouting "purple elephant" could effectively stop sneezing. The woman tried it,
Purple elephant, purple elephant, purple elephant.
and the sneezing indeed stopped. The team quickly pried open the door. The woman was successfully rescued, but just as the firefighter was packing up, he found a shoe in the grass. Upon picking it up, it was clearly a severed foot. Looking at the severed foot, the captain realized. The woman said she crashed because a deer suddenly appeared on the road, but now it was clear it was a person. At this moment, Paul noticed it was a cycling shoe. The injured person must have been a cyclist. Sure enough, a bicycle was found not far away. Paul soon found bloodstains on the grass. They finally found the cyclist. The man still had a pulse, but his wound was still bleeding profusely. The paramedic hurried to bandage the wound with a tourniquet. The severe pain woke the man up. After a series of rescue efforts, the man was saved. The man had just come home from the army. He wanted to surprise his wife. However, to his despair, he was accidentally hit by his wife's car. Just moments ago, the woman had been driving their daughter to church for a baptism. The husband's sudden return caught her off guard, and she was overwhelmed with excitement. She didn't notice the car approaching from side and accidentally ran over her husband. The man was firmly trapped under the car, with blood flowing profusely from his leg. The paramedic diagnosed an injury to the popliteal artery. To rescue the man quickly, firefighters secured the car and attempted to lift it with jaws of life. The man cried out in pain, revealing that his leg was tightly stuck under the chassis. A firefighter suggested applying lubricant to try. They quickly applied lubricant to his thigh. As the car was lifted again, they successfully freed his leg. Unfortunately, the man fell unconscious. Paramedics immediately began resuscitation efforts. After 20 minutes, there was still no response from the man. Realizing the gravity of the situation, his wife held their daughter close, wanting her to see the father one last time. At that moment, the baby girl, who was just learning to speak, perhaps hearing his daughter's call, the man's heart started beating again. The man fell into the cement. He was almost out of breath. The supervisor ignored the firefighter's advice and opened the release valve. The man was immediately sucked down. Just a moment ago, an employee at the cement factory accidentally fell into a cement silo. The firefighters climbed the ladder to the top of the silo. They looked down through the top hatch. Half of the man's body was stuck in the cement. The pressure of the cement made it hard for him to breathe. The firefighters told him to stay calm. They waited for the ladder to be in place and the anchor point to be secured. Then they would go down and rescue him. At that moment, the supervisor also climbed up. He suggested opening the bottom release valve. The firefighters said this would destabilize the cement. Then the man suddenly said he couldn't breathe. The supervisor, afraid he would die inside, ignored the firefighter's advice. He insisted on opening the valve.
You need to back up and let us handle this.
But the supervisor's action made the situation even more critical. Luckily, the ladder was ready. They lowered an air quality monitor, then rappelled down to rescue him. The firefighter placed a backboard on the cement to reduce pressure and tied a safety rope around the man. As the firefighter placed another backboard, he noticed the man was about to suffocate, so quickly called another firefighter to help. They had just secured the man with ropes. When the air monitor started to alarm,
We need more air down here!
the firefighters extended an air duct down. Oxygen levels quickly returned to normal, but there was no time to dig him out. The firefighters instructed to tighten the ropes. Then the lieutenant opened the release valve. The cement began to flow out slowly. The two firefighters dubbed the cement around the man desperately. This reduced the suction, preventing him from being torn apart by the cement. The man soon had most of his body free. The firefighters quickly notified to close the valve. Then they pulled the man up. The paramedics gave him an intravenous injection, then put an oxygen mask on him. The man slowly regained his breath. A serious accident occurred at the archery range. A man was lying on the ground. An arrow had shot straight through his neck. He tried to speak but couldn't. Brett told him to stay calm. She understood he was having trouble breathing, but he needed to try to relax. Upon checking, his oxygen levels were normal, so he didn't need to be sedated. It was best to let him breathe on his own. Therefore, the arrow couldn't be removed. Kelly suggested rigging up a C-collar. Brett said the arrow was too long to transport him. They needed to cut the arrow short. Kelly instructed the team to get a whizzer saw and a tool bag. Brett asked why not just just cut it off. Kelly explained it was carton. Bolt cutters would crush it into razor-sharp splinters. The paramedic used a suction device to clear the blood from the man's mouth. Firefighters clamped the arrow with pliers to minimize vibrations during cutting. But as soon as the saw touched the arrow, the man groaned in pain. Brett quickly called for a stop. The vibration was giving him subcutaneous emphysema. The bubbles were putting pressure on his throat. They had to prevent air from getting in. They used bandages to create figure-8 wraps. Then the firefighters resumed cutting. Finally, they successfully cut the arrow shaft, then placed him on the stretcher and transported him to the hospital. These women were all about to give birth, yet they didn't go to the hospital. Instead, they came to a yoga session. One woman suddenly got herself stuck in a locust pose. Paramedics arrived and found there was no trauma to the belly. Vitals seemed normal. The woman likely slipped a disc, as the paramedics were about to get her on her side. Another situation arose on the other side.
I think I'm having contractions.
Upon learning her due date was in 3 days, Bobby speculated it was a soft labor. He thought the contractions would subside once she relaxed and drank some water. But then suddenly, a third woman's water broke. The woman immediately took off her pants. Buck said her contractions had just started, and the baby wouldn't come immediately.
No, this is my fourth kid. It's coming.
Bobby soon realized the second woman's contractions were too rapid for safe transport. She had to give birth on the spot, which he could handle. On the other side, a fourth woman went into labor as well. The instructor mentioned the influence of the full moon and regretted having the session. The second woman pushed and the baby girl was successfully delivered. Seeing Buck's flustered expression, the third woman reminded him she didn't need much assistance. Bobby discovered the fourth woman was experiencing cephalopelvic disproportion, meaning the baby's head was too large to fit through and could only be delivered at a hospital. Just then reinforcements arrived. The man was holding his head and pacing around the room, shouting, "Get it off me," as if something had crawled into his head. The neighbor said he had been like this for 20 minutes. The paramedic asked him what was in his head, but he just cried and said it's in here. Brett asked if he has any history of drug abuse or psychiatric issues. The neighbor said he is a pretty chill guy. Seeing this, McCamey stepped forward to check the situation. Others also tried to help, but the man wouldn't stop, continuing to crash around the room, shouting it's moving everywhere.
Okay, grab me the amio. You think he's going into cardiac arrest? It's not for him.
It seemed Mikami figured out the cause. She secretly moved to the man's side and then injected ammo into his ear. After that, the man's movements slowly calmed down.
Slow down. Stop.
Brett had him lie on his side on the floor. At this moment, they finally saw what was inside.
Oh, you want to do this part? Not a chance.
Brett carefully inserted tweezers into his ear. A live bug was gently pulled out, but it accidentally fell to the ground. And then a plane crashed on a downtown street. The wheel hit the windshield of a car. One of the wings sliced through a moving car, causing the driver to die on the spot. The driver's wife, who was in the passenger seat, was seriously injured. Lieutenant Casey hurried to check on the pilot after the door was pried open.
No, I don't need that thing. Just let me out of here.
They found that the pilot didn't seem to be seriously injured.
How old are you, sir?
85, and don't blame this on my age. The tower fed me the wrong coordinates.
The old man kept blaming the FAA, saying it was their fault that his plane crashed. At that moment, the firefighters suddenly heard a woman's cry for help.
Ma'am? We're gonna need a medic.
Another injured person was hanging directly from a resident's window. The paramedic checked and found the man's pulse was weak and bleeding heavily. They immediately moved him into the room. Upon closer inspection, found that his stomach was severely injured.
The glass broke through his abdominal wall. We need to pack him right here before he bleeds out all over the place.
Press down, not too hard. There might still be glass.
After emergency treatment, they needed to rush him to the hospital. A car stuck underneath a tractor trailer. After the firefighters rescued the driver, a few of them remained at the scene. It was then that a firefighter noticed something unusual. He quickly signaled to his teammates not to speak because he seemed to hear a noise. So they approached the car again and lifted the crushed roof. To their surprise, it was empty inside. He doubted he had heard correctly, but as he pulled back a blanket, a car seat was revealed underneath. After lifted the blanket, oh my god, inside was a toddler still strapped in.
Hey, buddy, you're okay. Get that thing on fire. Yeah, I got you.
The firefighter carried the boy out and called for help, but the nearest ambulance was 15 minutes away. They felt the boy needed immediate medical attention. He called his teammate Brett on her cell phone, who had just finished her previous call, and she said they were only 2 minutes away. Upon examination, it was found that the boy's lungs had collapsed due to the accident. Showing symptoms of tension pneumothorax, the paramedic swiftly administered an intravenous tube. Only then did the boy regain normal breathing. They then lifted the boy into the ambulance. Firefighters were called. The car was actually stuck in an electric pole.
Well, that is some parking job.
What made the firefighters worried was the car axle was sitting on 10,000 volts. The people inside the car were at risk of electrocution at any moment. The captain asked his man to call utilities to cut off the power. The firefighters on the scene looked puzzled. How did the car end up there? It turned out the father was teaching his son parallel parking when suddenly the father had a heart attack. At this moment, the firefighter reported the utilities team were 20 minutes away, but the dangerous situation at the scene couldn't wait. They had to take action now. First, they assumed the entire car was electrified. They must avoid metal parts during rescue. A firefighter drove the aerial ladder next to the car, then slowly extended the board inside. He told the boy to strap the life belt to his father, but the father was unusually anxious at this time, insisting on waiting until the power was cut off before getting out of the car. Just then, the electric spark ignited the leaking gasoline. The car quickly became engulfed in flames. There was no choice but to leave now. A car was suspended in midair before it had tried to beat someone to a spot and crashed right through the wall. Even worse, the blue car below was hit directly by falling concrete. The driver was in critical condition. At that moment, a piece of metal suddenly fell from above. Now both the car on the ground and the one hanging above were in extreme danger. They had to carry out the rescue on both sides simultaneously. The truck company was responsible for towing the car on the ground. While the rescue squad needed to stabilize the car above, paramedic instructed the woman to remove her scarf and tie around the driver's arm to stop the bleeding. The rescue team quickly reached the rooftop. The chief assessed the situation and realized there was no time to secure the car. They could only hold it temporarily with chains, and Kelly was tasked with rescuing the driver. He first shattered the rear window and then slid inside. The car swung back and forth like a pendulum. He quickly pulled the man out. By that time, the truck company had secured the chains and began pulling the car. As the car was being dragged forward, Kelly and the man jumped out. The wall could no longer hold up, and the car plunged straight down, landing in the spot where the blue car had just been parked.